Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us. My name is Tristan Claridge, and I'm the convener of this webinar series for the International Social Capital Association. Our mission is really simple, and it's very important. It's to advance the research and the practical application of the concept of social capital. We've been running this webinar series since about 2020, and we bring people together from all around the world to share ideas and build connections. And if you'd like to be part of that community, the association is always welcome to new members. In fact, we're holding an international conference in Dubai next March. I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Alexandra David for a presentation titled Understanding the Nuances of Disconnectedness in Migrant Entrepreneurs within Entrepreneurial Ecosystems. Alexandra, or Alex for people who know her, has an incredible background that brings together communication, economics, and sociology. She earned her PhD at the University of Twente in the Netherlands, and since 2006 has been part of the Institute for Work and Technology at Westphalian University in Germany. What really stands out in her work is a focus on people, on how diversity, migration, and innovation play out in everyday life, and how power dynamics shape the opportunities available to different groups. She has a passion for looking at minority entrepreneurship and finding ways to include vulnerable groups in labour markets and innovation ecosystems. Alex combines rigorous research with genuine commitment to making societies more inclusive and creative. I think you'll really enjoy hearing her perspective today. Welcome, Alex, and over to you for the presentation.
Good morning or good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Thanks for all the people with us today, and a warm welcome to all of you. And yeah, as you can hear, my voice is a little bit... So Judith is joining us today, my colleague, and we both were included in this study and also in studies running all over the time. And we are very much specialized on, as Tristan said already, and thank you for the invitation, Tristan, yeah, we are very much into migrant entrepreneurship, but also further minority groups and entrepreneurial ecosystems, which we will dive into so that everybody knows what we mean and what is meant all over. I changed the name of the presentation a little bit to make it more, like poppy. So I said perspectives on entrepreneurial ecosystems, lessons from migrant entrepreneurs and the experiences of disconnectedness. And we will see why this is in brackets. Yeah, and so as mentioned, this is a joint study of Judith and also Jörg Freiling from the University of Bremen. And we are running, we already accomplished 100 interviews all over Germany with migrant and refugee entrepreneurs. So all over several and diverse sectors. So there is, no specific sector we are heading for, but for this presentation, we will see a table with the people we had interviews with, and I would say we just start. I'm sorry. So, okay, what was the study all about, and what was the assumption when we went into the study? And it was the entrepreneurial ecosystems, and this is a concept, quite well known in, meanwhile, in geographic economy and in sociology. These are more or less, we can say, groups of actors that are bounded regionally or locally, try to push entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial activities in a specific regional entity. So the assumption was that such entrepreneurial ecosystems, so, like the networks, the groups of people, the actors working together, should be inclusive spaces that support all forms of entrepreneurship, regardless of origin, gender, socioeconomic background, or the type of business they want to start. So startups, or everyday entrepreneurship, whatever you name it. And so we just came up with the research question, how far are migrant entrepreneurs? And we will explain whom we mean by migrant entrepreneur, are connected to the local entrepreneurial ecosystem, which we call EE. And how does this connectedness influence the access to resources, opportunities, and support networks? So for doing this, we had a very long, questionnaire. We just went out there and we're about to talking to these people. But of course, there was this theoretical foundation. And as you can see, we are coming from several strengths of literature. Here we have, first of all, the migrant entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurial ecosystems definitions. So as said, very well known by Eisenberg is the definition of entrepreneurial ecosystems that are consisting of a set of individual elements, such as leadership, culture, capital market, and open-minded customers that combine in complex ways. And then we know Mason Brown, but also Stam and Spiegel, who then further developed it and set a set of independent actors and factors coordinated in such a way that they enable productive entrepreneurship within a particular territory. What we mean by productive entrepreneurship is just entrepreneurship that is giving labor to people, or is, producing goods and services with a good turnover or whatever. So this is more or less what an entrepreneurial ecosystem is. It might be regional, it might be also local, like city-based. So it always depends on the entity you would like to have, in your study. And then here we have two studies named by Bolzani, Mizau, and Neumeier and colleagues who say that, for instance, minorities like migrant entrepreneurs are at the same time locally present and culturally diverse from the mainstream host society, thus being prone to separation from the native community and participation to different social clusters. And also sometimes access to institutions. And then there are economic and social boundaries in entrepreneurial ecosystems that hinder sometimes the connectedness. And we will see later on what we mean by that, between the actors belonging to minorities and, as said, the institutions, the other actors of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and minorities, such as in our case, migrant entrepreneurs. And here we see once again, and this is beautifully drawn by Judith, how such an entrepreneurial ecosystem might look like or work in the best case. We see that you have the entrepreneurial elements, which is physical infrastructure, of course, demand, intermediaries, talents, knowledge, leadership, and finance. Of course, you have the actors, the formal institutions, but you have also the culture and the networks. Very often it is very much past dependent. And then as an output, when all these elements work together, we have a quite good entrepreneurial activity, and then the value creation. And as said, we have the productive entrepreneurship. And here we can see once again how all these actors work together. And of course, we have a quality of governance with the formal institutions. And we see that the elements of entrepreneurial ecosystem are mutually independent and co-evolving at the same time. And this is the best case, to like a breeding ground for entrepreneurial activity in a specific region or regional entity. And what do we mean by migrant entrepreneurship? And so, because this study was based in Germany, and we know that it very much depends on the migration processes in a specific host country, but also, the groups of people who migrate. But when it comes to Germany, the micro census, which is the biggest German data database says that these are companies founded and or run by migrants or people with a migration history. And in Germany, this is first and further generations already. And the micro census is also calling out to people who just have one parent foreign born. These people are also referred to as migrant entrepreneurs in Germany. And these people, of course, offer products and services to all customers. And this is important because in literature, we have, and then we come to the connectedness, we have also ethnic entrepreneurship. And these are people, as we understand it from the literature, that offer services and products to a specific ethnic group. But by the way, they don't need to be migrants or refugee entrepreneurs themselves. So it can be also German or native-born people who then offer specific services and products to specific ethnic groups, and then we call them also ethnic entrepreneurs. But here the definition of connectedness, and we stick to the well-known bridging, bonding, and linking. So we say connectedness in social capital refers to the extent to which individuals or groups are connected or linked within a social networks. So it's very broad. First of all, social capital is a concept that encompasses the value derived from social relationships and networks, and connectedness is one of its key components. And we can see here that bridging, bonding, and linking, which was very close to the concepts of Bourdieu, is closely connected to connectedness, and bridging is, like having bridges involving the effort to access new networks, new contacts, and network resources. In the case of migrant entrepreneurs, it would or might be another ethnic group or native-born entrepreneurs, just to make it, quite clear. And then we have the bonding, which involves deepening the relationships you already have. So you go deeper, for instance, in your ethnic group, in your diaspora networks, in specific further networks that are close to your culture. And then linking always involves creating social relationships with the leaders or government officials to leverage their power and influence. And so we see here connectedness, once again taken from literature. We have Bourdieu, Putnam, and then, of course, we see that all it together has to do with embeddedness, which comes from Granovetter. And so meanwhile, after running all these studies, we tried to talk about, trinity of relational connections. And for us, this is embeddedness, connectedness, and at the moment, we are also working on belongingness. But this presentation just focuses on the connectedness. But of course, we had to look at the other concepts too. So when it comes to methodology, at that time running the study, we've been inspired by the grounded theory and an abductive approach. So we had an interview guideline development before we read a lot of literature. We had a pre-test with 3 migrant entrepreneurs. And then we had a process of 2 phases, deductive reasoning and inductive approach. And I don't know why the literature review is coming, the last one. But as said, we took first literature, then we developed the interview guide, we went into the interviews, and then, we tried to backloop it into what we knew from literature. And this is a little bit how it looks like. So we had the deductive reasoning, theory driven, and then inductive reasoning from the data back to the theory. And that was our sampling. So at that time, it were 23 interviews in a Western German city. First and second migrant generation, the interviews were face-to-face, lasting 40 to 19 minutes from April 2023 to October 2023. And the selection criteria was, of course, migrant background, business location, business registration, and gender. And yes, we went, like we reached out to the people and we asked them if they would refer to themselves or identify themselves as migrant entrepreneurs. And so we approached 34 migrant entrepreneurs, but then at the end just could accomplish 23 interviews. And yeah, the selection process, as said, was really walking around, examination, but then snowball, also asking people if they know other people who would like to talk to us, and yeah, personal contact. And this is how it looked like. So you can see here that in the municipality or the city where we've been approaching the people, yeah, we had several districts, and we even have 3 remote people from tech industries. And as it comes to further sectors, it is really very diverse, like from event management to food services, cosmetics, and so on and so forth. And as you can also see, the majority of the people we asked were male. So we just have several females. And also in the 100 interviews following that one, we don't have that much female migrant entrepreneurs. And you can see that here is a very high degree of people coming from Turkey or having Turkey roots. We've been quite sad because we just wanted to approach Polish people, but also people from Italy or Spanish people, which was then good luck in another city we did after that study. But yeah, it was not possible here. And also we've been really, we had really problems to get into Arabic communities. So we are discussing this until today. Why is it like it is? We have also some theories, but this is maybe for later. And the data analysis was, as you know it, literature, then interviews inserted in Max QDA and paraphrasing. And then we had, it resulted in 876 votes. And then we had our consensus meetings with 31st order codes. And after unexpected findings, which we will show you now, inductive coding was employed in phase 2 to delineate the mixed deductive inductive course of the study. And then you can see that we had done then inductive coding resulted in 129 votes and summaries in 61st orders. I know it's a little bit, but yeah, that was the phase 1 coding scheme. So we've been searching for bonding and bridging and linking, and we're hoping to get the connectedness out there. But then we found this one, and that was multiple segregation, lack of representation, alienation, resource voice, and discrimination. And we called it then disconnectedness. But how comes? So findings. Surprisingly, as we could see already, we found more indications of migrant entrepreneurs' disconnectedness than connectedness with entrepreneurial or the specific entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so our indications of disconnectedness, and there is so much, I cannot tell you, but we are just taking some in as an example. So you could see we named it, for instance, multiple segregation. And we say entrepreneurial segregation manifests through a myriad of systematic biases and societal prejudices, often echoing personal adversities akin to the struggles faced during education pathways. What does that mean? That means that, yeah, a lot of migrant entrepreneurs we talk to and still talking to tell us that before starting entrepreneurship, they already feel segregated. So even if they come to Germany at a very young age, or even if they are the second generation, during the pathway into education, they experience segregation and also discrimination. I would say, yeah, they experience just discrimination, as simple as this. And it changes something. And very often, this is what drives them to entrepreneurship or drives some ways how they later do entrepreneurship. So within the entrepreneurial landscape, we say systematic biases manifest through rejections, which they then, even being an entrepreneur, feel, and exclusions reminiscent of historical discriminatory experiences. So what happens is they already experience as young people discrimination and segregation, and then entering entrepreneurship, yeah, it's just they feel it's like even more, they are even more exposed to this. And yeah, first I live it like that. And for instance, we have a Turkish female entrepreneur describing her journey. And she says, so when I was looking for a location, when she, was just about to start, I was rejected without even having an appointment for a viewing. I don't think I necessarily have an accent now. She came at the age of 3, I can remember. I don't know exactly, but I was directly rejected with the second question that was, where are you from? When I said I'm from Turkey, it was like reliving that experience after many years. I thought I was very well integrated and settled after 40 years, but I received another slap in the face as if to say, we don't rent to Turks. Here we have another example, and this is now lack of a representation, and this very much is close to linking. In addition to experiencing multiple forms of segregation, migrant entrepreneurs frequently encounter significant obstacles in securing representation within institutions, such as chambers of commerce, for instance. The interview suggests that their distinct experiences and needs are often overlooked or insufficiently addressed, resulting in disparities in access to critical support systems. And we have here a Kurd entrepreneur running a vegan kebab recalling, when I called, it's not easy even during the phone call. I want to make my residence permit identified. You need to know if he can't do that, he needs to close his shop and just leave Germany, okay? So I've been trying to make an appointment for a year. When I call, they say, yes, you can schedule it online. They say online, but online, there are no appointments. You can't make an appointment. That's why it's difficult, not only for migrants, but maybe for others too. But it's like that. It's just difficult now. I can't find a solution, for example, to make an appointment with an official. Here an example for alienation and cultural divergence. Some migrant entrepreneurs mentioned encountering a sense of alienation, influencing the connection to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. This estrangement stems from various aspects of their experiences, leaving them feeling disconnected and marginalized from the German and other ethnic communities. And this is important because very often they say it's not just about native entrepreneurs, it's also further ethnic communities we cannot go along with. And here's an example. I don't know if it's because of my appearance or Turkish surname, but in certain crucial situations, you feel certain ressentiments or resentments, you sense it. And this is a second generation Turkish entrepreneur, as born in Germany. So we see that it's also seems to be a challenge with the second generation. And then we have resource voids, which it's very close to social capital and Bourdieu's forms of capital. Oh, I'm sorry. Some migrant, no, this is, yeah, sorry for that one. Despite entrepreneurs' ambitions to succeed, the lack of support from governmental bodies remains evident. Financial assistance is sparse, and bureaucratic complexities further impede progress. A grocery owner remembered when starting his business, financial support from the government or the city, zero. I've submitted numerous applications, had several phone calls, and had no chance. Yes, there was a funding program for the street. So this is a street in a neighborhood where the streets had many closures, and there was this program where people could just call or apply for funding. They offered to cover 50 or 80% of the rent for 2 years, but it didn't apply to me. They said it was for everyone else, but not for me. Why? I don't know. And then we have discrimination. So we say the topic of discrimination in entrepreneurial ecosystem was frequently broached by interviewees, even without direct prompting from the interviewers. Migrant entrepreneurs consistently narrated enduring discrimination, whether in their professional or personal lives, with some indicating that this challenge oriented during their school years. So this is what I mentioned at the beginning. A second-generation Palestinian entrepreneur said, "Germany does not value what I do. I will always be a refugee from Palestine. I invest my money in Dubai and Turkey. I just pay high taxes here. Is this not enough?" So to conclude, and we have, meanwhile, really like many quotes from this municipality, but also from 3 further municipalities. But for this one, we say, while societies often communicate the intention to include migrants and migrant entrepreneurs, real life settings reveal sustaining situations of disconnectedness. And we just say this, that it's essential to have a look at that one. In the discussion, we can give you another insights and where our studies are running now. Moreover, as a response to the research question, disconnectedness plays a prominent role, but it's also neglected. While this finding is not entirely new, because we could see that Bolzani and Mitzau and Neumeier already did a lot of work on that one, this study allows for specifying such a challenging state for migrant entrepreneurs in entrepreneurial ecosystems. So the factors behind disconnectedness do not exist in isolation, we argue. Instead, they are interconnected through mutual interactions and causal relationships, and discrimination still is one of such destructive factors. And from this, because this was a paper we've been writing then, we had our propositions where we say discrimination positively impacts the segregation of migrant entrepreneurs in multiple ways. Discrimination also causes and reinforces resource voids of migrant entrepreneurs. A lack of representation of migrant entrepreneurs in relevant institutions for entrepreneurial support causes or increases their resource voice, and alienation drives the multiple segregation of migrant entrepreneurs in entrepreneurial ecosystems. And so here we had towards an integrated approach. And as I said, we are working on that one, where we argue that first connectedness needs to come in to have embeddedness. While we extended that one with belongingness already. So this is not part of that study here. But also we say, on the other hand, that connectedness, which was bridging, bonding, linking, when it plays out into disconnectedness, it's not like disbridging, disbonding, but we say it's discrimination, alienation, loneliness, and lack of meaning. And then we say that altogether brings a kind of disconnectedness and then also a disembeddedness. by disembeddedness, we mean that these people just simply are in a specific place and they do their business there. And of course, they need to be part of something. But the question is then how much embedded are they really? And we also see that very often after a time, they go back to their ethnic networks and diasporas and start running their businesses there, or try to find this kind of connectedness or even a sense of belonging to their communities and not to the majority society. Yeah, and here we say it once again. I don't know, Judith, maybe you want to give some insights too, because you have further views on that one.
I can take over. Thanks, Alex. We used to have these two separate concepts which weren't linked together. So we initially started, what we actually had in mind was that migrant entrepreneurs are somehow connected to the ecosystem. Then we observed that they are in some facets disconnected from the system. So this led us to, it was quite of a surprising result. We didn't expect that they are so much disconnected. So we thought bringing together disconnectedness and connectedness in one concept could be a good solution. So we have the bridging, bonding, linking on the one hand. This in the middle is the ecosystem with the resources, with the networks, with the actors working together. And then we see the interplay between multiple segregation and discrimination, resource voids, lack of resources. And by accounting for the bridging, bonding, and linking on the one hand, while considering that there might be forms of disaggregation through multiple segregation or resource voids, we can actually find solutions to overcome these. And this is actually what our aim was. And this actually leads us also, so this was embedded in a study for a city, and we presented our results basically to the city, to the policymakers, to the decision makers in that city, with really saying, you now need to do this and that. So giving them recommendations to overcome these disconnectedness. So it's a long-term process, but nevertheless, we hope they're going to make it.
Yeah. And so what we say is, you did already said the main point here to understand the reality of migrant entrepreneurs in entrepreneurial ecosystem. It is mandatory to understand the emergence and development of disconnectedness more comprehensively. What we meant by this, and we still mean, we are even further developing this, that there is the relational side to all of that. So very often in the literature of migrant entrepreneurship, and we know the MEF, the mixed embeddedness approach from Klosterman and Rath, which is like the initial point in studying migrant entrepreneurship, we very much know that it's all about resources, like really financial resources, human capital, blah, all these things. But here what we see is that there is the relational side to all of it. It's all about, or it's not all about, but there is also a side of strong connections to specific networks, to the networks that should be in place when you start entrepreneurship. And then the question was, what happens if you are not connected to this specific networks that are, the one helping you to bring entrepreneurship, your business into life. And so I don't want to repeat a lot, but we say here disconnectedness is a multifaceted phenomenon with 5 constituted factors, and we are sure that there are more out there, but this is what we could find at this stage in our study. And we also say that the bonding bridging distinction does not capture the full complexity of social capital, lacking a multidimensional view. And as said, we are now taking in the concept of belongingness, which is a psychological one. because we are going the road deeper into the relational side of all that. And then we said when migrant entrepreneurs experience the negative implication of disconnectedness, they have different options at hand. And this is something that we don't talk about in this presentation, but what we have done then running the studies the next years, like still now we are running the same study in the city of Hamburg. We found out that maybe we should have a look at power disbalances in entrepreneurial ecosystems. And we also, but this is for another presentation, working very much with Foucault's concepts of power and suppression, but also empowerment of yourself, technologies of yourself, and all these things. So I just wanted to give like a preview where this study led us to. And here we see some limitations, like, of course, ethnic background to dance, similar age brackets, no comparison group. And I think at the moment we are at the point where Judith and I, and also Jörg, where we say that this is the most important one, the no comparison group. And we are now running also studies with German entrepreneurs to find out how their connectedness and belongingness is or feels like to them. And yeah, this is what we tried to do a little bit, like where we are at the moment with the power imbalances and the conflict areas. And but this is maybe for the discussion, so I don't want to go there. But that's our publication. So this specific study is written down in that one. So if you are interested, it's open access. You just can download it. But thank you very much for listening. Judith, do you have something you would like to share?
Oh, thanks. You did a perfect job, Alexandra.
Wonderful.
Good.
Thanks very much, Alex. That was a really great presentation. Such a rich picture of the research context there. It's always great to hear the quotes from the actual participants, the people talking about their lived experience. It's always so rich and adds a lot to the meaning of the research. So I've got a bit of time for some questions and discussion. You can either raise your hand, which I see several people have already done so, and we'll get to you when I do, if you can unmute yourself to ask your question. You can also post in the chat, and I'll happily read out the question on your behalf if you're not in a position to read it yourself. But if you want me to read it, please let me know so that I can do so. So we'll go hopefully in order. As I understand it, I've got a question too, but I'll wait my turn. To Dr. Reedy first in the chat, who asks, did you try to bring it to the notice of government about the discrimination of migrant entrepreneurs as they are contributors to the economy? And Dr. Reedy, feel free to unmute yourself if you have any follow-up comments.
Yeah, that's all at the moment, and thanks. You can go ahead.
I already answered that question partly in my previous section, because we did the study in the city and we presented it throughout the city. So at very different occasions to policymakers and decision takers. So we had like, I think about 5 or 6 different presentations in different public authority groups coming to integration, or to the economic group, and so on and so forth. So they have become quite aware of that discrimination fact here. Yes. But of course, what we also did, and I find that even more important, not in Germany we say to put the finger in the wound, is to offer a solution, to help them think about how to get beyond that and how to get really to the point where this isn't such a huge issue anymore. I mean, you can't prevent it, but for example, in your own institutions, you can take measures to really lower it. For example, if you have in the Chamber of Commerce no one from the migrant community represented, so how shall they define services for that community? So people need to move in that institutional setting and have representatives in there. And this is something we, for example, recommended to the citizen, get the people on board.
Yeah, maybe we can also mention this, that with this specific study, what they did is after a year, like it went through the small houses of the city, and now they have like a contact point. I guess the contact point is with 4 people sitting in the not Chamber of Commerce, but what is it, Judith? Development Economic Agency, and they are specified on consultation of migrant entrepreneurs. Yeah.
And that,
So
maybe,
yeah.
Alex, if I may add, the interesting thing here is that they just didn't put their only consultants for startup business, but they also add there a person from the social offices, they add a person from the labor market integration agency. So they put different people from different disciplines and divisions in that one group to really follow this holistic approach of support of migrant entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So it's running and it will be evaluated in, I guess they have 3 years time to evaluate it. And this is like, I guess, the first city ever in Germany doing that one. So we are, usually if you are a social scientist, nobody's really interested in that one. But that one was really like, they try to change their mind. Also, the narratives of migrant entrepreneurship. So also, like, I guess that sometimes they are not even aware, and it's not a kind of discrimination, like they want to discriminate you. Simply, sometimes they don't have employees who talk English, for instance, right? Because they just simply are not aware of the importance to have employees talking English.
Okay. In addition to it, and I would like to say that, how about migrant entrepreneurs? Do they have any networks? And if not, can we form networks and strengthen them, nurture them, so that we can lobby and advocate with the governments and policy makers, so that they can get their due share? It's only a suggestion.
Yeah, they have several networks. Nevertheless, they are all, that's basically their strategy. As they are not represented in the main networks, they found their own networks, their own communities. But the point here is that even exacerbates their disconnectedness, staying in their own community. So what we are looking for, and even the entrepreneurs themselves, when you ask them, so what do you expect from the city or from the regional, local economic development agency? They do not say, connect us with our own community, but connect us with the others to whom we are not connected. So I think we really need to, what is labeled is inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we have to have this one ecosystem, because then we have the best opportunities to really benefit from the various, very distinct ideas of how to do things, how to run a business. So there are this very, very insightful ways of doing that migrant entrepreneurs have, which the native-born entrepreneurs are not aware of. So sharing these experiences is quite helpful and for the ecosystem as a whole.
Thank you.
And as you pointed out, Bourdieu's work really clearly demonstrates how a lot of it comes down to the availability of the resources within those networks. So, you can be connected with people, but if those people don't have access to the kinds of resources you're looking for, then clearly they don't provide the access that you need. So I think we'll go to Devendra next, and then to Sarah, and then Raymond. So Devendra, feel free to unmute yourself.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for the presentation. I think every time I hear this, I get new ideas. I've cited your paper in one of my upcoming paper itself. Look, I had a specific understanding, perhaps, was that what I understand from the work that you're showing and the people you had, appeared that most of these were traditional retail-based entrepreneurs, or on like a like a strip mall basis on a council level. Have you considered looking at industry clusters and the experiences of knowledge or innovation or incubator-based ecosystems? Because there are some very different people who have very different understanding of what it means to co-create. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, as said, we've been running several studies. So if you mean knowledge intensive people, we've been running first, I don't know, it was during the COVID time, a study in Berlin with high-tech or knowledge-intensive migrant entrepreneurs. And you need to know that international students in Germany, when they stop being a student, are also migrant entrepreneurs. So this is quite interesting because Germany just wants to have people like this, right? So yeah, what we found out is very similar, to be honest. So we even found more disconnectedness because these people very often are not located in Berlin. This is a very nice phenomenon. Maybe Judith can also add something on that one. They talk about the Berlin ecosystem, but what they mean is a mind map of the Berlin ecosystem, like a network. But they don't really mean Berlin, the city. So they mean the people they are working with, they are registered in Berlin, but they live very often somewhere else and just come to visit Berlin from time to time to say hello to these groups of people. So what these people very often do, for instance, to overcome specific segregation and discrimination and also, like these relational barriers, they very often search for a German co-founder who is doing the work, So this is a bit different to, let's say, to the other everyday entrepreneurship people. These people very often reach out back to their ethnic communities and say, look, I tried it with the German one, but yeah, it seems strange to me. Do you have anything you can help me with? While the others, they just reach out to the ecosystem itself and say, okay, I know some German co-founders. I just asked them if they can help me out. So this is a big difference we could find there, but maybe Judith can elaborate on that one. I don't know if you have any further thoughts or you can remember anything else from that study.
Yeah, basically, it was this community thinking. So the community is, Berlin is very associated to the community I have, even though, as Alex said, they are not there in the place, but it's basically a brain model. Berlin, my community, and this is where I belong to. And this is I find this quite fascinating. And you see that more and more that you have these remote ecosystems that pop up more and more, and especially in the knowledge intensive service sector, less so though in the industry sector. But concerning your question regarding industry, we also talk to, for example, food manufacturers. So huge fabrics, which is really an industry. So basically, the findings are not so different in what they perceive and to what extent they are disconnected or connected, and how they have this sense of belonging, feeling to be part of them. But then on the other hand, what we also see and what we didn't present here is that especially female migrant entrepreneurs have a strong connection and a strong sense of wishing to give back to the community, to the location. And this they engage in social activities in the quarter where their business is located, found networks and so on and so forth. And so there is this really social attitude, I would say, and the strong feeling. So I had the chance to start my business and now I want to give back. And that's more pronounced with women than with men.
Well, thank you. I think what I found similarities on my data collection on Indian migrants becoming entrepreneurs in Australia, the theme that came out, especially in knowledge-intensive businesses, where they used the term called front-ending. So they said, for us to succeed, as soon as an Indian origin migrant goes in quotes, the general assumption is that the prices should be lower. So we front end with someone who's in quotes Aussie, and it doesn't mean the original Australian people, essentially people who have got Anglo-Saxon or Irish or European background. So and that gives them that connection within the ecosystem, but also to their target customers. So it suddenly opens up doors more faster than it would if you have you come with your own background. So that's very interesting that you speak, which shows perhaps a almost transcontinental connection to the way things work, at least in the westernized.
Yeah, you also have this whole discussion of transnational migrant and entrepreneurship. So that exactly, I think, what you're partly talking about.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that question. We'll go to Sarah next and then to Raymond after that.
Okay, good morning. Thank you so much for the interesting presentation. I really enjoyed it. I did research myself in Belgium on women, migrant and immigrant entrepreneurs of African descent, so with a specific focus on Africa. But what we found, and I wanted to hear your experiences, there seemed to be a difference, not deterministic, but between the first generation and the second generation, where actually their perception of the entrepreneurial ecosystem and the discrimination in the entrepreneurial ecosystem was quite different among both generations, where I found that the first generation women tended to see discrimination more towards their business. So they would explain it. It seemed they were aware that it might be discrimination based on their intersectional identities, but they would explain it through their business. So they would say, my business is not big enough, I still have to grow, I still have to meet some standards. While the second generation, and this is something that came out of your quotes, but I didn't always know, was it first or second generation, because I think it's a mix, and we're like, yeah, but this is not about my business, it's about me. It's about who I am, because of course they also had multiple experiences. But the effect that I saw is that the way they engage in the entrepreneurial system is then quite different, where women of the first generation were like, I will prove I can do it. And women of the second generation seemed beyond proving and were like, I'm not trying anymore. But their businesses, but this was a qualitative study, so I cannot make generalizations, was much more about diversity, inclusion, while the first generation, it's more ethnic businesses or cultural businesses, which is normal, which we see in the literature. But at the same time, it seemed for the second generation a quite conscious decision. I want to make these systems more inclusive. Now, I submitted my paper, I got through the desk reject phase, but then in the end I got rejected still. And one of the reasons was that they felt I was not making a theoretical contribution in the first and second generation. But for me, because I was not framing it in that discussion, but for me, I haven't found much literature on discussing those differences. And I wondered if you know of literature or if you also saw these kind of patterns in your study.
Yeah, so very interesting. We are running now a study in Hamburg on the Afro-German community. So it's very interesting. Yeah, in general, we cannot say it's the first and second generation, but what we can say is definitely that with the Afro-German community, it's very visible here, is that they say, okay, I tried now, enough, and enough is enough. And then what they do, for instance, now we are in the very much in knowledge intensive sectors, that they start own diaspora networks, which we would not refer to as diasporic anymore, because it's, for instance, an Afro-German startup pitch, which is a huge network for knowledge-intensive people that are Afro-Germans. And they even, when they go back to their community to start their businesses there, they even take the German colleagues and co-founders with them to the Afro-German community. And this is where the belongingness comes in. Where we say, okay, there seems to be something else than connectedness and embedded, there seems to be something relational apart from social so it's also part of the social capital, but it's very deep-rooted in your identity, where you search for your social capital, and you are at a certain point where you say, okay, I need to leave specific networks and I need to get into networks I feel included in, so that I can, for instance, Judith and I, we go even the way we say you can't innovate if you do not feel the sense of belonging. You can't, you simply can't, because we even argue at the end of the day, if you take everything out, it's all, it's the sense of belonging bringing you, so it's we argue it's the only reference point where everything begins. And we say from the sense of belonging, the one holding social capital, all sorts of capital together. So this is what we can say from now, but
concerning, maybe I may jump in, concerning your question. You are right. There is no literature explicitly focusing on that first, second generation issue. But you could take one of the older ones, looking, for example, into Foucault with his technologies of oneself, could be an anchor point for you to really disentangle this distinct perceptions of. So look into the older literature, because I think they have so much to offer. In this regard.
Continue a bit more? I know other people, but I just want to be, because it's about the belonging. I think they're the belonging for the first generation. For me, what I saw is they have a much higher sense of belonging to their own ethnic community, which we didn't see so much in the second generation, where this embeddedness was a bit lost. So I think we also know from the literature that having a strong social identity, so that social identity, but then also belonging, mitigates the negative effects of discrimination. So it compensates for that, because so that is one. And then I think for the belonging, because I just submitted my PhD, but one for the future was, I was also thinking the belonging, May writes that the feeling of not belonging is actually a trigger for social change. That if you don't feel you belong, and I see what you say about innovation, but maybe you don't feel you belong in this entrepreneurial ecosystem, it might trigger social change. And I think that is what I saw with some of the second generation women entrepreneurs, determined to say, I want to change the system and make it more inclusive, and I do this through my business. While women of the first generation, they still had the idea they would belong as long as they try hard enough. That was a bit, okay, thank you. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's running. So if you've been rejected somewhere else, it's open.
I've been.
So it's open. The call is still open. You can use it. You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Let's go to Raymond next, and then we've got a question in the chat from Sen, and then we'll get to Jeffrey after that.
Okay. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry I can't open my camera. Okay, not really a question, just a comment. Okay, I noticed that the preponderance of your subjects interviewed are Middle Eastern. are there no Chinese migrant entrepreneurs or other nationalities that you can compare this if they're experiencing the same, you say, discrimination in business applications or entering the ecosystem, so you speak? The second is speaking from the context of the third world country. Okay, so most of the barriers to entry to a particular industry or business is related to corruption, not so much discrimination. And of course, competitive pressure. If I noticed that, I think I just can't recall, no, but most of the entrepreneurs who want to enter those businesses are very competitive businesses. So there is a natural barrier to entry in that industry, food industry, tech industry. Those are very competitive, and because of the intensity of the rivalry within that industry, there's a natural barrier to it. Okay, and number three is have you considered bureaucratic inefficiencies as one of the causes of this also? So I'm just looking at different angles in this study. Very interesting study, actually. So those are just observations, comparing other cultural groups, no? And corruption or other rivalries as barriers to entry, and government inefficiencies. Because if these barriers are also experienced by German nationals, yeah, maybe it could be discrimination. It's just a comment.
But to reply to your comment, because you asked whether we interviewed basically people from the Arabic world or from the Eastern world. We had, for example, migrant entrepreneurs from Spain, which is more likely like a European internal movement than a migration process. They even told us, and this was in knowledge-intensive service sector, they told us there are situations in their business life where they're standing in the room, being in a discussion, being in a conversation with people, with customers, and all of a sudden they get that feeling, there's this elephant in the room. There's something I do not understand. These are not the spoken words, because the female entrepreneur spoke perfectly German, of course, slightly Spanish accent, but not very bad. But this nuances of language, and then you find yourself in a situation that you can't fully express or understand how people at the moment look at you or look generally, using their mimics. And that was for someone who is also European, and which is Catholic European country, I mean Spain. So this is very close to our culture. And even she noticed this, I would say, imbalances. I don't know exactly how to describe it in English. So if you have like a tone which is very flat, and this tone is like moving around, and you can't grasp what it actually is, what you do not understand in that situation.
Great. Raymond, did you have any follow-up, or was that answer your questions?
No, just the fact that I want to, maybe there should be a comparative study between other cultural groups, no, so that you can really broaden the analysis. What I'm seeing is that they're basically just from Middle Eastern countries that have been interviewed, are willing to be interviewed, right? So that's a built-in bias in the study. I understand this is a qualitative study, and of course, yeah, snowballing and all of these things. But very interesting study, no? Are the other cultural groups who are applying experiencing the same quote unquote biases or prejudices, no? Instead of that's the outworking of corruption or whatever that is, or bureaucratic inefficiencies. So that's just, and of course, competitive rivalry within the industry that they're trying to enter.
Yeah, thanks very much for your question, Raymond. So we'll
Thank
go
you,
to
thank you.
a comment in the chat, and then we'll go to Jeffrey after that. Sen had unfortunately had to run to work, so couldn't stay to ask this question themselves. The question is, could you speak about the experience where the entrepreneurs did feel belonging, connectedness, or embeddedness in the way they wished for? And what were the practices or postures that led to this?
Yeah, so very much this was a little bit what Sarah was referring to. When we found connectedness, it was really forced by the people themselves. What do we mean by that? For instance, entrepreneurs would say, okay, we feel disconnected, we need to do something about that. And then they enter networks, groups of people they identify as being important for business doing in Germany, like for instance chambers of commerce. You need to be a member if you want or not, but what they do then, they try to engage a lot, and then they even go to the board and become board members so that they can change something, or they start own networks for instance, for female migrant entrepreneurs, or they engage socially very much in the neighborhood. So this is what we found, just to feel connected. I just wanted to say what Judith said before. It would very much come with the symbolic capital of Bourdieu a little bit, the sense of there is something between us when we talk that I cannot catch, because you are not acknowledged to be part of something, by the majority group. Like they do not acknowledge you as being part of them. So this is something they sense, maybe, if we come back to the capital level. But yeah, I don't know, you do you have any further, or very often it is if you do not start a company, but you overtake, I don't know, how do you call it when you overtake a company from someone else? So very often we have migrant entrepreneurs who overtake a company from a German person, and then they run it in parallel for, let's say, 5 years. Then we see phenomenons like that the migrants even they don't even change the name of the company, even if this is a German name. And this has nothing to do with discrimination, but they just say, okay, we come along very well, and this name is existent since 40 years, and it's doing a good work, is like a prestige, and I just overtake it as a migrant entrepreneur, and my name is, I don't know, Mustafa whatever, for instance, and I take someone whose name is Klaus whatever, and that has nothing to do with discrimination, as they say, or that they are afraid to be discriminated if they come up with their foreign name. No, they just say it's just like a fact of, feeling of belonging, being owner of this company, and then they just run it. So yeah, we would say these are more or less counter conducts the people, or a kind of agency they try to bring forward to strengthen the sense of the connectedness, or the sense of belonging.
Yeah, great. There's a follow-up comment in the chat we'll get to have a look at. Looks like they only heard a snippet of the response, unfortunately, just because they'll catch up with it later. Where are the places where this change needs to come from within and then bring outward? If there's a follow-up there. Alex, any further comments just about that final question? How can we identify and spread the lived practice of increasing belonging across different parts of the entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Yeah, so after these almost 100 interviews now, Judith and I were as said, trying to work on, to move forward with this concept into the power concept itself. So it's a bit different, but where we really say that migrant entrepreneurs are not victims. We don't like to victimize them too much, or to marginalize them. But what we say is that, because what we also could observe is that, as said, they very much try to empower themselves and to come up with some specifics. As named, they try to get into networks, they try to take a German co-founder, they try to engage into the local communities and so on and so forth. But also they bring up new ideas, new niches of businesses, also transnational ways of doing things. And this shows us that victimizing, we need to show that there is still discrimination and segregation and so on and so forth. But victimization is not bringing us anywhere. And talking to these people, we see they don't want to be victimized, or they don't want to be spoken about as being margins. They see themselves as, proud business people. And this is what we try now to work on, like power relations. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a subject, as Foucault called it, but also to take the role in and say, okay, I see where I should stay in the discourse, but now I do something about that. And I changed the discourse even, and I changed the way of thinking. And so this is, and the way of doing. And so this is where, both of us, where we are now running this, I don't know, very much confused also in the process. But we learned to sit with the process, to sit with the data, and not to hurry, but just think about it, what might be the next step? Where is it going? Yeah. Judith, I mean.
I think you did a fine job. And there was this one question in the chat, where are the places or spaces where this change happens? They're not quite obvious. So it took us quite some time to really dive in, and also to build a trust basis for people to talk to us, to speak to us, really open-minded. It's not like you just go there as a researcher and they're like very open-minded and tell you all their problems and what they experience in life. But it is like a really slow process. And you, as Alex said, you need to take your time, and you need to be very open to and listen, especially listen to what people tell you. I mean, we have this interview guideline where we have all these different questions on it, blah, blah, blah. But usually we start with an initial question, and people start telling things because they're sort of also proud telling their entrepreneurial journey. So how came that into being? And so we really try to listen very careful to then identify the areas or the points or the moments which made a change for them, for the community, for the ecosystem. And that also means for us we usually record the interviews, to listen to the interviews again and again and again, to really figure out, so what was the moment, what was the situation, what happened in that specific situation, why did the conversation change to just another wrinkle? And this is really something also we as researchers have to be very careful and reflect upon ourselves, whether we produce evidence that we wish to produce. So biased evidence. So I think we really, and this is actually what Alex also meant with sit with the data and think, and not just head for the next article. Really consider carefully. And this is the self-reflection, questioning our own work. So what is our impact basically? How do we help those communities actually to make a change? And I think, Sarah, you brought it to the point. There is a second generation entrepreneurs which really, they have a strong self-esteem also, to really want to, they strive for change. And I think we as a researchers need to acknowledge it, but also be careful, self-reflective in the whole process.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Sarah, do you just want a quick follow-up?
I'm sorry, if I just want, because you were saying we have to make sure that we don't want to produce the results that we wish to see, or that is very important. I think what triggered us in the research is the fact that it also relates to what you said about they don't want to be victimized, is that we saw a huge difference when we approached the women, where some women were offended by our interest to interview them as ethnic entrepreneurs, or migrant entrepreneurs, while others were very happy that finally somebody would listen to them. And at the beginning, I mean, I saw this difference, but I didn't link it to generation. I felt it might be something personal. But after doing the data analysis, I saw, but this comes back with women who were born and raised in Belgium, and the other woman who came at a later age. And I think the literature makes a distinction at the age of 12. But I think in our sample, we saw it was rather at the age of 6, that there's a kind of distinction, that women said, like, finally somebody listens and wants to be put in the picture because they are African.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, Tristan. Yeah, so that's really interesting. So this is like sitting with the data, what Judith says, like, where do you, like, trying to see the whole picture. And this brings us back to the relational side, which we say probably it's not only about financial capital, but it is about social capital. It is about identity. It is about symbolic capital too, which is part or very close related to social capital. It is about all these things, the feeling of, do I belong somewhere? What does this mean for my identity? And when do I need to change identities too, or change parts of my identities? This is so complex, And as you said, we have the same experience. Some people are happy we listen to them, and some people are just like, do you really mean I'm a migrant entrepreneur? Never saw myself like that, like this. But then starting telling their stories, it is very close, like it's just and therefore we went with Foucault and subjectification and blah blah, because we thought, okay, it's the same situation, it's the same story, but there is something about it why some people perceive it like this and the others like that, so yeah. But we could talk for hours. I'm sorry, Tristan, we are just like...
No, it is fascinating. I'm aware Jeffrey's been waiting a very long time. So Jeffrey, feel free to ask your question or comment.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alex and Judith, for this great paper. I have read it before and have enjoyed. And actually, so when you kept on explaining, my question sort of was answered within, but again, it would have been so wrong for me to withdraw the question. So, but let me ask, just following up on the sense of belonging, would it be that perhaps the person's own feeling and identity could determine how he or she feels about the belonging, and also probably the future prospect? Because you could be saying the same street, you're all from the same migrant community, but your aspiration for future will determine how you relate with who you relate with today, different from the next person though. Could I be right to say so?
So we are working at the moment on the concept. And so what we can say by now is that the sense of belonging very much, let's put it like this, the sense of belonging very much impacts if you engage, where you engage, with whom you engage, you know. And I was never aware, like before I went there, I was never aware that first, you know, like you have your psychological blah, 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 and then comes the sense of belonging coming from this psychological stuff you just, you know, and then comes the identity. I never knew that it's that way. I always thought it would be first the psychological base, then it would be the identity, and then would be the sense of belonging. Why I had to learn that it's the other way around. So what does that mean? That means that the way where you belong to, how you you know, which groups of people you feel part of, and here we are again with the social and symbolic capital and all these sorts. And then identity comes. Okay, so this is so important, because if you don't feel you belong, for instance, to the majority society, and now let's just spin it, okay, and now you say, I would like to innovate, I would like to have a new product, for instance, then where do you go if you want to have to develop the new product? You go where you belong, right? You don't go to the official ecosystems, you go back maybe to your diasporic communities, or, you know. So it's not only about, hey, my identity and however, but it's also the question, what gets lost for the majority society if people do not feel that they belong to something, and if they, you know, cannot share ideas, thoughts, the way how they would like to do things, and so on. So it's, you know, it sticks in between. And yeah, so and also the belongingness, how we call it, to, you know, to make it more pop like pop art, you know, it's you know, if you go back to segregation issues, okay, in the main discourse, it is like, yeah, you know, all these ethnic communities, they want to segregate themselves. But what we learned, if you don't get your location where you wish to get it, but if you get your location in specific neighborhoods who are maybe deprived, who are maybe migrants with 80–90% of migrant population, then it's not your free will to segregate yourself, but you are segregated by the system. So this is also like, you know, what Foucault calls this positive, which is not the main discourse, but which is all the yeah, things that are running in parallel. So as you can see, we don't have the last point to make here. We are just in the mid of the process. We have all these data. We have, yeah, all these data from different cities, different sectors, different ethnic backgrounds, different generations. And we just, yeah, as Judith said, sit down with that one and also do the work with the German entrepreneurs, because, and this is also very specific just for the German context, as we know that context always matters. We have also the very hot theory that Germany is not open-minded to any entrepreneurship, you know, like we have an anti-entrepreneurship culture here. And this is also very interesting to know then, what does that mean for all entrepreneurs, also for the German born, you know, what is their social capital, what is their connectedness? We would like to find out that one too. And then we have like a big picture. Yeah, and then we just move to another topic.
In 5 to 10 years then.
In 5 to 10 years. Yeah. Or we just retire then. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you
thanks for your
so much.
question.
Yeah.
Thanks for your question, Jeffrey. Muldasa, do you want to ask your question?
Mudassar, you had a question, on what was it, on Ukrainian women?
Hi, ma'am. I'm basically from Pakistan, from Sialkot, Pakistan, which is the biggest entrepreneurial hub especially in Pakistan. And I'm also working as an entrepreneur. I have a export firm of sportswear, and I'm working on the women entrepreneurship research. I already research on the women entrepreneurs in Sialkot city and different EU citizens. Now I am working on the refugee women entrepreneurs' well-being, which creates their public identity and public value. I think the problem is that the refugee women entrepreneurs does not have the public identity. They are not creating their social values and the social ideas to the public community. And the entrepreneurial ecosystem, especially, is not working in the European Union, especially. I'm working on the data of Spain with Professor Dr. Patricia Pile Iglesias from the University of Malaga, Spain. I'm collaborating with her. So my topic is what the European Union is working on the refugee women entrepreneurs, especially the women entrepreneurs who comes from Ukraine affected during the Ukrainian war. What they get and what opportunities are they getting in the European Union. I'm working in the Spain region, especially in the Andalusia region of Spain, in the Malaga, Seville, the big cities, from the data collection from there. And I'm testing the data analysis. Now I'm working on the synopsis. Just publishing an article, just publishing a paper is not enough. If we are working as a researcher, as a women entrepreneurship researcher, our responsibility is to conduct the fact, not the publishing or not the publishing and paper. Just publish and paper on impact factor is not a problem. But we can find out the fact and real fact about the refugee women entrepreneurs. The refugees, some refugees does legal in the European, especially they are working as a job holder or they are getting 500 or 600 euros per month. They are not ready to become an entrepreneur because there are many barriers faced by the refugee women entrepreneurs, especially according to the European Union data. Most of the European countries does not have the legal status. Most of the refugee women entrepreneurs does not have the visa status, does not have their temporary residence permits and the permanent residence permits. They are illegal and they don't want to become an entrepreneur, especially in the European region, if you are a refugee woman. So my question is that how we can work on the refugee women entrepreneurs' well-being in the EU and especially in the Central Europe, especially in Germany, especially in Nordic countries. So my research is that, and I'm extremely working on this research on the well-being of the refugee women entrepreneurs. I'm working with Professor Maria, and I'm working with Professor Elo on this research, especially in the European data, to work on the refugee entrepreneurs and conclude the facts about the European data. Thank you.
It would be maybe interesting for you also that two of our colleagues from Poland, Jolanta May and Sabina Kubiciel, also work a lot on Ukraine refugees, entrepreneurship in Poland. So they have also published several papers on that one. And also Alex and I have been working on refugee entrepreneurship in Germany, but from a very distinct angle, not just doing interviews and so on and so forth, but really we engaged in actual research, working directly with the refugees and the administration in order to synthesize both sides for what actually happens. So on the one hand, we have these entrepreneurs that say, okay, I'm here, I want to start my business, the refugees. So they were refugees mainly from Syria at that time. So that they were really engaged and they had the idea. So I know I'm in Germany here and I start my business right away. So then we have all these legal obligations and so forth in Germany. But then the administrative stuff, they don't want to bother you. with that. It's regulations. They have to bother you with what they do. So when we tried in that endeavor, we really tried to sensitize them for each other's needs and obligations also. And that was quite an interesting project, because we also engaged the refugee entrepreneurs throughout the research process. So they defined the research questions and so on and so forth. So that was quite an interesting one.
Ma'am, according to my research paper, my data is divided to two proportions. One are the refugee women entrepreneurs who are from the Ukraine especially, and one are the refugee women entrepreneurs from the other whole world, in Spain, especially in the Andalusia region. And according to my data and the United States Human Commission for the Refugees data, there are 15,000 refugees women entrepreneurs, especially in the Andalusia region of Spain. So you can see the traffic there, and there are many problems for them to start a business, to start a new venture, to create public identity. And they are not having the funds, they are not having the human capital, they are not having the community support for them. So we have to work on as a woman entrepreneurship researcher, it is my responsibility to work on the refugee women entrepreneurship research especially. And there is no more funding available who are working on the women entrepreneurship research. I also apply different platform fundings to work on the refugee women entrepreneurs, but unfortunately, I cannot get any funding from there. I have 4 research papers published on the women entrepreneurship research already, and there are implemented researches, not as a research paper or the impact factor research paper, but we have to seriously work on there are extremely traffic in the European Union, especially after the Russia and the Ukraine war, because the traffic are there in the European Union. And much of the Central Europe is busy in the women entrepreneurship research and the refugees. If a refugee cannot start a business, if a refugee cannot start a new venture, it is a tough situation from the basic administrations and the European culture especially. So we have to develop a scenario for there, and for especially for the refugees to start a new venture, and we can convince them you have to start a new venture. More of the refugees are not ready to interview them, and they are not giving data, and they are not you are from the immigration department, you are from the police department, why you are interviewing us. They are very shy, and they are not giving data to the women entrepreneurship researchers, especially search on them. So we have to work on this.
You also have to be very careful, because of course you have the European legislations, but mostly when it comes to refugees, there are all these different national legislations. And so this is quite a context-specific issue. So how is the procedure of being acknowledged as a refugee and so on and so forth? We have seen that in that EU project we have run, and to transform, that it is quite difficult to work on that on a European level, because the national legislations are so different, the wording is different, the understanding of what actually a refugee is are very different. So it takes a lot of consideration at that side.
And also do not forget, and then I'm really closing with that comment, is that refugees from Ukraine, but also refugees from Russia. I've been working with Maria Ivanova-Gongna and Maria Ilo on Russian entrepreneurs. They don't want to very often to say what their ethnicity or identity or nationality is, because there are so much discriminated, and Russian even more than Ukrainians, so this is also a problem. And I am born in Poland, so I have some connections over there, and I know that even in Poland, the whole feeling about Ukrainian people is changing. So I think it is very, I can believe that these women are careful, or they don't want to open up that much, because it's a very strange situation they are in. And also very often, from from our side, we make a big distinction between Ukrainians and Russian people, you know, but I know from my mom that there are parts of Ukraine that, yeah, that very much relate to the Russian culture. So sometimes they are even friends, you know, and they need to like act they are not. So all these cultural things are in these women, with these women, you know, and so I think this is also something to be aware of. It's not an easy story, like main stories are not. But thank you.
Ma'am,
And
we
we
have to
are over
work on the
time.
refugee entrepreneurs especially because there are many problems for the refugee women entrepreneurs, and most of the important question is they don't have the social value and don't have the public value creation. The society is not accepting them as a refugee. They are asking to back to home and go to your country, go to your home country. You are not working there. We have not a job. We have not a business situations there. They are not granting their funds, and no one can help them. You are the refugee and you can work with us. No, there is no chance to give the refugee women entrepreneurs. They have the social business and they are not giving a chance to start a new venture there. There's a big problem.
And I get the feeling we could talk about this all day. It's such an important area of research and such fascinating research that you're doing, but we are over time and we do need to wrap it up. So thanks very much, Alex and Udith, for giving this presentation and for the research that you're doing. We really appreciate you taking the time to share that with us. And our next webinar is going to be by Graham Hall next week. He's going to be talking about emotional intelligence as infrastructure, designing cultures that scale social capital. Then we're going to take a little bit of a break in our webinar series while I'm traveling, and we'll be back in mid-November with a continuation of our webinars. And of course, I hope to see many of you at our conference next year in Dubai. And of course, Alex dropped a link in the chat as well to the conference that they're running in Germany in January as well, which may be of interest to some of you. So thanks everyone very much for participating. Look forward to seeing you again in future.
Thank you very much.